Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome on behalf of all of the Peerage Capital family, friends, colleagues, and partners. It's a privilege to have the opportunity to talk to Dr. Frank Luntz. We had the privilege of speaking to him about 100 days ago, just after the election, and now we scheduled to have the first 100 days and an assessment about what has happened with the administration, the issues that they're facing, the progress they've made, and the challenges they face. So Frank, it's great to have you. I guess I'd start off, if you had to give a letter grade to President Biden on the first 100 days, how would you grade his performance?
It's the right question to ask, and it's very difficult for me to answer because I see it from so many different perspectives. From the perspective of returning to normal, of a sense of this hysteria coming to an end, I'd actually give him a minus. We're no longer waking up thinking, what was the latest tweet? What is the latest fight that we're now engaged in? Who's being yelled at? What investigation is happening? All that stuff is done. And that is because of Joe Biden, his approach. So in terms of returning to a political normal, let's say A minus. In terms of the unity, he's a D plus, and I'll tell you why. And most people don't see it. He went through his first 100 days without meeting with Kevin McCarthy even once, even though Kevin's got the largest House minority of any minority in decades. He is not communicating with Mitch McConnell. He does talk to an occasional Republican senator or congressman, but it's occasional. There's no unity. There's no genuine bipartisanship. The way Trump has behaved, you have a chance to endorse him, but you don't have to have the chance to affect his policies. So I don't want to say that you're completely ineffective if you're a Republican member of Congress, because you can slow him down. But the truth is, for the tens of millions of Americans who voted for a Republican member of the Senate or the House, they're not being heard right now. Two more grades in terms of the spending, in terms of the policies, and I state this because I want to set this in context. I believe deficits matter. I believe that the debt matters. And Miles, I am scared to death of the type of things that we are committing right now for the next generation. Obviously, I look at your backdrop. I don't know if it's a photograph or that's really where you are, but regardless, you are successful. You can see from the back of my house, I've been successful. We can afford to pay it. What frustrates me more so than ever before, because I'm teaching again, this time with USC in DC, just finished up a 3-month course with them. These kids have no idea how it's going to impact them. We are robbing their future to pay for the people today. And up to a point, it's what you do. Up to a point, we all give a little. We all pay taxes. We all make a commitment to help those who are not as fortunate as we are, or to help to ask the next generation to give a little more because people are suffering right now. I get that. 1.9 trillion, no way. We're going to do another one, infrastructure. There's no infrastructure in infrastructure. It's all these it's a wish list of the liberal progressive wing of the Democratic Party. It's why he's got so much support from AOC and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, because he's talking like a moderate, but he's governing much more left wing than he ever promised. And so that I give him an F. And in terms of his State of the Union, which really wasn't a State of the Union, but in terms of that speech, it's a C. He was okay. He wasn't great. He wasn't horrible. I don't know how we're going to pay for all of this. I know, Miles, that the people who are on this call from your side of things really do care about taxes, as do the people who are on this from my side. And I apologize for the long answer, but it deserves a long answer because there's so many different aspects of the Biden presidency so far. In terms of that speech, it's a C. There's nothing memorable. There's nothing horrible. It was tough to deliver to a chamber that was more than half empty. And I give him credit for persevering in tough times. And by the way, let me give him one straight A, if not an A plus, which is on COVID. We would not have the vaccines if Donald Trump's administration had not pushed it, but we would not have distributed as quickly, as effectively, if it had not been for Joe Biden. So in terms of the COVID relief, my God, he deserves an A+. This guy really did get vaccines out to the people, and now everyone who wants one has the ability to get one, regardless of whether you live in a rural area, if you live in a community of Black and brown, if you're a young woman or an old guy, doesn't matter. You now have access to it, and thank God. So on that, he delivers an A+. I'm sorry.
No, that's very helpful. Let's divide what you said into little segments. So let's go to the vaccine to start with. He said that he would deliver 100 million vaccines in the first 100 days. He's delivered 220 million. There have been 400,000 deaths in America. Last week, when you were being interviewed, they asked you what messaging would you give Biden in the joint sessions of Congress. You said he should acknowledge what the Trump administration had done from Operation whatever force to produce all the vaccines. He's never done that, but he has done a fantastic job at rolling it out. What do the American, you do polling all the time. What do the American people think about the rollout of vaccines, and what do they think the future looks like to deal with the variances of the different strains of COVID-19?
I know we got a problem, and I've not said it publicly. It was written about in the New York Times for the first time today. And we knew it from our research as recently as 6 weeks ago, but I wasn't willing to say it publicly, and I'm still not. And I know that there are reporters on this, and I say this off the record. I mean it off the record, because what I'm about to say is not helpful for getting people vaccinated. Miles, we're not going to hit herd immunity. We've done a fantastic job in this country, much better than you, much better than the Canadians, in actually getting the vaccines out, getting it organized, getting it distributed, in issuing the information that people needed to have. And it's why I've been apoplectic about getting as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible, because once you're vaccinated, you're safe, at least safe for now. And I know it's coming in terms of these variances and these different strains. They are brutal and they are deadly, and they're coming from Brazil and India and South Africa and the UK. And we got to be prepared. But that herd immunity, according to Anthony Fauci, is 85%. Now, I'm not, you always hear people say, I'm not a scientist, I just play one on television. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a medical expert, but I am a polling expert, and I do know what the population is. And as recently as a month ago, I would have said that we would have hit 80%. Miles, I don't think we're going to cross that 80% threshold. If you had me project right now with 100 days of the Biden administration, I think we're going to get to in a final number. And to me, the final number is where we are on the 1st of September. On the 1st of September, I believe we will have crossed the 75% threshold, but not the 80% threshold.
And so is the restriction or the limitation the fact that there's not enough production, or it's because psychologically there's a big part of the population who does not believe in being immunized? They don't want to take the vaccine.
They're afraid to take the vaccine because they're afraid of the side effects. And actually what happened with Johnson & Johnson was a plus, which I was not expecting. And now this is on the record for the reporters here. I would have assumed that stopping a vaccine because 6 people developed serious blood clots would have actually been a negative. It turns out it's a positive, because they had distributed 6.8 million J&J vaccines. And 6 of them, even if it had been 10 of them, even if it had been 20 of them, 100 of them, 6.8 million. And they stopped the vaccine because 6 people developed serious clotting issues. That communicated to the American people that the FDA actually is on top of this. And the FDA and the CDC and the NIH and all the various health organizations are so engaged and so careful that they're prepared to do what it takes because of 6 out of 6.8 million. That's brilliant. If I ever question the federal government, which I have, the federal government's ability to run something like this, I actually would have said at 6 people, don't stop it at 6 people. Analyze it, investigate it fully, but don't stop, don't slow it down. But they gave them the good housekeeping seal of approval. And now I'm just afraid that we won't hit that number. And I'm watching what's happening in Europe, which is even more nervous. Miles, I got a goal, which is I don't want to stop in America. I'm trying, I'm reaching out to the embassies and the ambassadors. This would be a wonderful task for me at this point in my life to take this on in as many countries as possible, because for the first time in my professional life, it's not about making money. It's not about even doing good. It's about saving lives. And I'll give you guys, because the press people are on this, and we got a great turnout, by the way. They need to know that their own doctor got the vaccine, and it's over 90% now of doctors are vaccinated. Their own doctor has to reach out to them, not just to respond to their questions, but do so proactively to address their questions, their hesitations and concerns. And third, that the virus is so much more dangerous, that the worst that can happen with the vaccine is that you're tired for a couple of days. You don't feel great. The worst that can happen now with these new strains is that you die.
Anthony Fauci had a fairly adversarial relationship with the former president. What's his relationship with Joe Biden and the Biden administration, and is he able to affect positive change on the programs and implementation of procedures and health regimen under the Biden administration?
By the way, I just realized that this is the place I need to do all of my calls, because it's dark down here. So people won't notice I got my beard cut off, but they won't see what is left of my neck. So I need to do it right here, because it's light up here and it's dark down here. If I'm as well lit as you, everybody will see what my neck looks like. So I just realized that, because I've not been looking at this. Anthony Fauci has had trouble with the Biden administration in that he doesn't always say what they want him to. And his role isn't to say what they want him to. But he's created some of that hesitation, because in the end, there needs to be a light at the end of the tunnel. Perhaps the most important thing I can say for communicators out there is that you need to express the end result of something. If you want people to do X, you want them to do X because of Y, you need to tell them the Z. What is the impact? What is the so that? And the answer is, I happen to have this near me. I'll tell you the two things I advised the Biden administration. They didn't do either. Number one is I wanted him to actually call out Donald Trump from the stage, from the podium, and credit him for getting the vaccine done so quickly, because in the end, it's Trump voters who are not getting vaccinated. And they're not getting vaccinated because they think that this is a political virus rather than a health virus. And the other thing was, I wanted him to dangle this, and I wanted him to toss it away, saying, if we get to 85%, you all can do this, and throw it in the trash. Because what a signal that would send, that that's the return to normal that we want. Not just the social distancing, not just the ability to go out and see people and engage, or be able to do it inside, but the idea that we don't have to wear masks anymore. And I think that was a missed opportunity. That's why I only gave the speech a C. But he has done an outstanding job in getting needles into arms.
So let's take the next segment of what you talked about. When he ran, he said he would govern from the middle, that he was a centrist, that he wouldn't have extreme points of view. It seems like he has moved far to the left. If you look at his proposed tax policies, you talk about, there's $2 trillion that was spent already, another $1.9 trillion of proposed spending, and then $2 trillion of infrastructure. It's the greatest deficit in history. He's talked about not changing taxes when he ran, but now he's proposing to eliminate 1031 real estate rollovers. He's proposing to get rid of, to raise capital gains taxes to the same marginal tax rate as the highest federal, to 40%. And he's talking about eliminating for private equity and hedge funds the I forget the tax, where they pay capital gains tax on their gains instead of regular income. Those are extreme points of view on taxation. They're dramatically different than he ran. And what are people saying about it, both Democrats and Republicans? And what's the likelihood that he gets them approved? And is he actually moving to the far left? Carried interest was what I was referring to.
And carried interest is an issue for only a small number of people, but the points that you raise are all true. His commitment was that he wouldn't raise taxes on people with incomes under $400,000. So we're going to see what he's going to do with SALT. That's the one that everyone is watching, because if he makes that if he changes that, then he actually would be changing the tax code to people who have a significant amount of money. And SALT is the allowing people in those really, really high tax states to deduct their state and local taxes. It'll be interesting if he gives those people a break or not, because he talked about repealing it. He is not raising taxes on those under $400,000, but he is hitting the people above that really, really hard. Not with the income tax. That will simply go back to where it was before Donald Trump was president, but in the investment area. Joe Biden fundamentally believes that investment is not the same as income, and he wants to prioritize income. So we will go from a middle state, a middle country in terms of capital gains and interest in the other investment taxes, to being one of the highest taxed countries in the world if he gets his way. The two people that you have to watch carefully to see if he's going to get his way are two Democratic senators, because in the end, and by the way, I want to be clear about this, really clear. There's no reason for Republicans to be in this situation, to be in a 50-50 Senate. They're in a 50-50 Senate because of how Donald Trump behaved in the period from the election to the runoff on the 4th of January. Those two seats should have been Republican seats, and they would have been Republican seats if Donald Trump hadn't been screaming again and 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 again that the election had been robbed. There's no reason to vote because the system is fixed. It's rigged. It wasn't. He lost, and he took those two Georgia senators down with him, and that's why the Democrats now have a 50-50 Senate. Joe Manchin has shown his willingness in some cases to refuse to support the Democratic majority representing West Virginia, one of the most conservative states in the country. He has to do that. But on taxes, I believe in the end, and I'm going to say something that he's not even saying right now. Miles, I believe in the end that if Biden compromises on taxes, Joe Manchin will support it, and that'll be the 50th vote. And then Kamala Harris will cast the deciding vote, because in the end, Manchin is not protecting. He will protect the working class voters of West Virginia. His whole reason for existing is to protect working class voters, is to make sure that West Virginia isn't ignored. But he's not going to protect millionaires and billionaires. He's not going to protect us. And so in the end, if Biden is really careful and much more surgical about his tax increases, I believe, even though he's not saying it now, I believe that Manchin will go along with him.
So you think that they will get approved as tabled currently?
No, I believe that believe they'll get approved, not as tabled currently, but as you get some sort of compromise. So maybe you don't put capital gains up at ordinary income. Maybe you put it at some sort of 20% reduction, but you can be assured that capital gains will go up. You can be assured that the rules on carried interest will change. And there will be other tax increases, particularly on corporations, because nobody supports corporations right now. They don't understand that when you raise the tax on a corporation, raise a tax on McDonald's, all that means is they'll open less stores, they'll hire less workers, they'll pay them less. And although I believe that may not be the case, and they'll charge more for customers. These taxes are always passed on to the consumer or play a role in how a company invests. Always. There's a reason why there's a 3.5% unemployment rate under Donald Trump. He did spend too much. The deficit and debt were too high under Donald Trump. It's not supposed to be that way under a Republican, but we had the strongest economy ever, the lowest unemployment rates ever, and the American people were seeing that actually their lives were improving. People who had not gotten a raise in a decade were putting more money away. And that was a good thing. And not the people at the upper end of the spectrum, at the lower end. Miles, I'm not an economist, I'm a pollster. And you know me, and you know that I am affected by how optimistic or pessimistic people are. If there's anger and division, it bothers me. There was that political division, but economically, we were really going gangbusters before COVID.
So I was watching the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting on the weekend, and they were talking to Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, and Charlie Munger said, Bernie Sanders got his way. He said, Bernie Sanders, believes that you can make poor people rich by making rich people poor. And all of these taxes are basically robbing the next generation and the next generation of the opportunity to create wealth by being enterprising, by risking capital, and by investing in new enterprises. And he said it will be much more difficult for future generations to be as successful as previous generations were because of the dramatic increase in capital gains tax and a hostile environment toward, entrepreneurial business. He said basically that you're leveling the playing field by making it more difficult for future generations to invest in entrepreneurial endeavors. How do you feel about that?
I don't think you're leveling the playing field. I think you're actually stacking it against people. And the problem is they'll never know what they lost. If something doesn't happen to you, if you're warned and you leave your home and a tornado is coming, you don't know what life would have been like if you had stayed. If you're able to prevent an economic downturn, you don't know what it's like. Or if you're able to provide more opportunity, if you're able to allow people to keep more of their money, you don't know what they would have spent it on or how they would have enjoyed their life. There's no way of knowing because that bad history doesn't happen. Joe Biden says that he is making the economy work for blue collar workers. What he's actually doing is limiting the potential that you have in America to dream big and make those big dreams come true. There still will be jobs, there still will be opportunities, but you're not going to get the next Netflix. You're not going to get the next Google, the next Uber. That one of the reasons why so many people come to this country, and how pro-immigrant I am, why they come to this country is because they don't have this opportunity where they are. And that means Europe, that means Asia. They see that only in America can you work hard, play by the rules, dream big, and with a little luck, because I accept that even people who work hard don't always make it. But you have the chance to fail and then the chance to do incredibly well. And that exists only in the States. Actually, Miles, I'm more nervous about our education system than I am about our rules for taxes. And I'm more nervous about how much money we're spending, all the waste, the fraud, abuse, and frankly, it's corruption. Because you're paying off, if you pay off the people who voted for you or donated to you, if you give them tax breaks, which is what, or rules or preferential treatment, which is exactly what Biden is doing to the unions, for the unions right now. That to me is corruption. It defines corruption. I don't believe Joe Biden's a liar. I think he told us exactly what he's going to do. But I think that what he's doing is corrupt and it's wrong. And that's what scares me.
So go back for a second, talk about economics. You will have had $6 trillion of stimulus and investment in infrastructure. You've had COVID, vaccine rollout challenges. You're not at herd immunity. Yet look at where we are today. You've got the S&P 500 hit an all-time high today of 4218. It's up from 50% from where it was a year ago when it hit 2800 in April of 2020. The market's up 12% this year. The 10 years at 165. It was at the long-term average last 25 years is 436. The all-time high was 1581 in 1981. No matter what's been thrown at the market, no matter what concerns, no matter concerns about inflation, concerns that rates will start to rise, concerns that we can't afford these deficits, everyone sees their 401k at all-time highs. What does the American population say with regard to where we are today and what the long-term implications for the government policies to stimulate the short-term economy and the market?
I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to ask you one because you have an expertise that the people who listen to my stuff, they'll be interested in. First is that the public is more optimistic now than it has been in a long, long time. More optimistic about the economy, more optimistic about COVID. We have genuinely emerged from this funk that we experienced last year when everything got shut down. And it's obvious. It's because everything's opening up back again. The tragedy is a lot of these restaurants will never be back. A lot of these small businesses have shut their doors forever. And we forget about that. Second is that there's more money swooshing around the various halls of finance that of course things have to go up. You can't be losing money now if you're upper middle class. And that's why Biden wants to raise the taxes, because he believes that the lower middle class are the ones who've suffered in the last year or the last 4 years. And the truth is, the lower middle classes actually benefit the most under Donald Trump in those 4 years than anybody else, because they're the ones who got the jobs. They're the ones who have been unemployed and then were back working in solid jobs again. And the public does approve of what's going on, even if Joe Biden is a mixed president. And I don't think we're ever going to have, or for a long time anyway, we're ever going to have someone who's got the support of a majority of both political parties. The Democrats love Biden to a degree that we haven't seen even under Donald Trump. Joe Biden is actually ahead of Trump right now among Democrats than Donald Trump was among Republicans. And Donald Trump was the most supported president of his political party ever. So Joe Biden's actually taking a page out of that and going even further.
But your data suggests that although Biden's popularity is greater than Trump's was after the first 100 days in their own party, that it's lower than Barack Obama and it's lower than George W. Bush. Why?
Because we're so divided that under Barack Obama, there were some Republicans willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. And his State of the Union address was brilliant, was one of the best ever. And his pre-inauguration effort and the first really 30, maybe 60 days were brilliant, attempting to reach across the aisle. Do you realize, Miles, there isn't a single Republican in Joe Biden's cabinet, not one? He says his cabinet looks like America. What about the 47% who voted Republican? Where are they in his? There aren't any. You realize he's got no senior Republican advisor, that they're going through cabinet agency by agency, removing anyone who they can, who is a political appointment, just everyone. Lock, stock, and barrel. You realize that he sent all the ambassadors home, all the ones that were political appointees. There are no Republicans left. That's not unity. That is sowing the seeds of the next great division. And if you've had enough of Donald Trump, you're actually creating the environment where he's going to get elected again. Not him, but somebody like him. If you refuse to listen to people because of how they vote, if you disrespect them, disregard them, if you deny them a voice, if you delegitimize them or dehumanize them, which is exactly what's happening, then you're going to have the same reaction 2 years or 4 years from now. Now, I actually think that there's a reasonable shot that Kevin McCarthy will become Speaker of the House, not because of anything that he's done, but because of what Joe Biden is doing against him. But Miles, I need to turn the table. I want to know why real estate is so insanely out of control, not just in the US, but in Canada as well. Why this surge? You're arguably in a better position than any human being to know what's going on in that market. I mean, what the hell?
So I would say I don't have all the answers, but I'll give you some perspective. There's more liquidity in the world today than ever before. There's more cash and liquidity in the pockets of everyone in North America than ever. Credit card debt is at an all-time low. And very importantly, mortgage rates are at an all-time low. 5-year mortgage, one of our children took out a mortgage 5 years at 2.36%. It's probably down 80% from when I was their age. The perceived value of a residence is greater than ever before. I think COVID, where you had a work from home environment, has made it that more and more people want to have their own residence. They have pride of ownership. If they have a single family home, they like having a backyard, they like having a garage, they like having that freedom and flexibility. And in Canada, the greatest investment for most people to make is their own residence, because it's the only tax-free appreciable asset that you could invest in. You do not pay taxes on your principal residence when you sell it. So I think, and also there is a dramatic shortage of supply. It was told to me that America is short 4 million homes a year of production. Canada also has a dramatic shortage of production. So I think the combination of tons of liquidity, very low cost, mortgage rates, huge perceived value to a residence, and a shortage of supply and inventory has made prices dramatically appreciate. The question on everyone's mind is what happens from here? And it's my humble expectation that there will be appreciation. It'll just be a lot more modest. In our own models, we forecasted sort of 5 to 7% growth in value of transactions, which is price times volume. And we think that's a sustainable number over the long term. Can it have 10 or 15 or 20 or 30% appreciation that we've had? No, that's not sustainable. But if they don't start increasing supply, you will have a consistent upward pressure on pricing of real estate across the board. In addition to that, in America, you have even greater pressures on price increases and volume in tax-free states. So Florida, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, all of these tax-free states, you have a huge influx of people from California going to Texas or Arizona, people from the Northeast going to Florida, or Texas. And you have a huge amount of movement. Even corporations are moving. Even hedge funds, private equity firms, all from the Northeast going to Florida. So the tax-free status is also a huge impetus for the growth in volume and value of transactions in these overall, but especially in the tax-free states.
So Miles, then allow me a follow-up. Does this outlive 2021? Are we going to see this continuing in 22 and 23? Or is this a one-time situation because of COVID and because of some of these rules that have changed?
Well, if I knew that, I'd be rich, but I don't know the answer. I believe that there will be appreciation. I believe that a big part of the determinant is what happens to rates. And I think my forecast is that we will be lower for longer, that you're not going to have a dramatic appreciation in the value in rates, and that the 10-year won't move up materially. And as a result of that, if you still have low cost mortgages, you will still have lots of people wanting to buy homes. If mortgage rates went to 5 or 6%, you would have a dramatic reduction in the amount of demand for real estate. But that doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. It seems like we're in a low interest rate environment for a long time, because although the economy is stronger, it's still very fragile. There's not a lot of wage inflation. Although they do say that the economy is getting better, there's 1 million jobs that are supposedly going to be announced that they were created in the first quarter. But the reality is it's still not strong enough to be able to support a higher interest rate, especially for mortgages. So I think you're going to consistently see value of real estate continue to appreciate. Just the second derivative is the rate of change, We will see a slower or a deceleration in the growth of pricing over a period of time. But the tax-free states still will have a huge amount of wind behind their sails. In Canada, there's another issue, immigration. So we have been the beneficiary in the real estate world in Canada of significant immigration. It has not happened in COVID, but they're expecting to have between 1.2 and 1.5 million new immigrants come to Canada in the next 3 years. That's about 400,000 or 500,000 a year. About 30 or 40% of those will come to Ontario, and probably most of that to Toronto. That will be a very big positive for real estate. The question I have for you is what's going to happen to immigration in the United States? Trump was very negative on immigration. Biden seems to be far more liberal on that. Immigration will have an impact on the overall economy. Where do you see policies of the Biden administration toward immigration?
We've been polling on it, and it's the source of some criticism that I've taken over the last 72 hours that some of you are aware of. The American people want tall fences and wide gates. Tall fences so that those who want to come here illegally cannot, and our borders are secure, and wide gates. So those who do come here, that we welcome more and more and more immigrants. We are now more pro-immigrant than we've been in a long time, even as we are having a crisis at the border. So it's one of those where it's a mixed message, but it hasn't changed the Americans' desire for genuine border security. They don't like what's happening down there. And in fact, Biden's approval rating is lower because of the mess at the border. But they don't want to turn away immigrants. And those people who on television, on social media, drive this anti-immigrant message, that's not a majority of Americans. It's not even a large plurality of Americans. We're all children of immigrants or grandchildren of immigrants. Our countries are built on the immigrant ideal. We just have to figure out and fix the system, which I've been working very hard studiously to do, so that Democrats and I've actually fashioned a compromise. I don't even know if you're aware of this, but I think this was what launched a lot of crap on me starting on Friday. That there is a solution that 60% of Americans support, only 20% oppose. And it's not been publicized, and I offer it to you on this call. We agree on the DREAM Act, which will affect more than 2 million children of immigrants who came to this country through no fault of their own. They didn't break the laws because they were not adults. Their parents may have. And for many of them, they've grown up in America. They don't speak Spanish or some other language. They only know America, and they consider themselves Americans. And they want to work hard. They want to live a life that's respected. And they're so eager to pledge allegiance. And I want them as citizens. I want them to earn citizenship, not give anyone, because we do way too much giving in society right now and not enough earning. But then I want the border secure, genuinely secure. And that means, and the public supports, continuing some sort of barrier. Sometimes it's a wall, sometimes it's a fence, sometimes it's technology, and it's clearly more border security guards. But our border is not working, and we do not have a safe and secure border. The American people believe that it's an absolute necessity. And Miles, if we do both, DREAM Act and genuine border security, by 3-1, the public says yes. That's a compromise the American people support, and I am getting crapped on by those on the right who are just very ugly in their point of view. And It's not a pleasant thing to experience.
Talk about the relationship between the Democrats and the Republicans. You had said before the election that hostility amongst the parties was at an all-time high, that you were very concerned about what the country looked like. Are you more optimistic today than you were 100 days ago? Less optimistic, or about the same?
I'm less optimistic because the people who are in the center are getting killed. And there is just such a sharp movement to our tribes. And the center is as angry as the extremes are. We did a session, and if you ever want me to, I could invite your colleagues and your clients and your friends and your supporters to actually listen in on one of these focus groups. But the center is just as angry and just as vicious, but for a different reason. They're angry because of this polarization and the rejection of politicians, professional politicians, for not getting things done, for not being able to work with each other, is truly out of control. And it's being fed by cable news. It's being fed by Fox and CNN and MSNBC. It's being fed by social media. About the only network that isn't feeding it is CNBC, and that's because it's a business network. And so they only deal with business news, or maybe Bloomberg. But everything that's being put into our heads is meant to trigger us. And it's meant for us not just to endorse our side of things, but to reject and demonize their side of things. And Miles, if this does not stop, it's going to tear, it will, it's not that it's going to, it will tear us apart. People are going to get killed. There's going to be this ugliness that happened. We saw this on January 6th, where people did die. Let me take it back. Let me do something we don't admit enough. What I just said is wrong. People did die on January 6th, and more people, and we'll have more violence like that if we don't cut it out. And I say this to everyone on this call: you do not have a monopoly on the truth. Miles doesn't, I don't. We make mistakes, we learn, we grow. And that is a good thing, not a bad thing. We read a book, we travel to a country, we interview someone, and we change our point of view. Bravo. That should be celebrated, not condemned. You are not a traitor if you learn something that you did not know 15 years ago. And the people on these cable news networks are doing so much damage. They're fucking up our country. And yet we watch them and we applaud them and we give them standing ovations and we say, way to go. It's not the way to go.
Talk about racial justice in policing. What's on the minds and in the hearts of the Black and brown Americans today? Do you think they have less confidence in the future, more confidence in the future, or the same? And
they have they have no confidence in the future. They got even though we saw justice done in Minnesota, which once again upset one of the cable news networks. Even though justice was done and accountability was achieved, there's still a feeling that the country, which now I'm about to take the other side, the feeling that the country is aligned against them, that the institutions are against them, that there's no way for them to break through. And Miles, I've learned through decades of research that if you believe you have agency, if you believe that you have the opportunity to change your life, you'll do it, you'll succeed. But if you label yourself a victim, and that's how you perceive things around you, you will never get out, you'll never climb out of it, you will be stuck. And what concerns me the most is that educators right now are telling their students in their classrooms that they're victims, rather than giving them the tools, the education, the math, the writing, the communication, giving them the tools to take control of their lives. I'm not allowed. I was yelled at by students when I said to them, stop saying like. If you say like all the time, you're not going to end up on television. You're not going to be a journalist. You're not going to be a newscaster. You're not going to be able to hold the world accountable if you can't articulate effectively. And they said to me, I'm a white male. I have no right to tell them that. I am using the Western European privilege, superiority, whatever the language is, whatever the latest thing that kids are saying these days. And I'm simply saying to them, no, there are standards. There is a level that you have to achieve or you will not get that chance. And please, I want you to have the chance to undo those things that you don't like. I want to empower you. I want to give you the skills and the tools to make a difference in your life. And in return, you have to agree to use them. You have no idea how awful it is in our schools right now, that they are what they are teaching them. And in some of the best schools in America, I'm not going to get into what's going on in Dalton. It's one of the best private schools in the country, one of the best private schools in the world. Google Dalton and read what's going on with the curriculum, what's going on with teaching. We are losing the ability. The academy has chosen sides, and it should be on the side of all students.
This
not
last
just
weekend,
some.
you were hosting 20 students and you took them to Virginia, and I think you took them to Washington. What's on the minds of these students, and what issues did they express that is worth sharing with the audience?
Well, it'll be funny because I don't know if anyone from USC is on this call, because the administration will have just found out, if they are, that I did this. I wanted them to experience Washington, Jefferson, and Madison. I wanted them to experience the Civil War Museum and the Richmond Capitol, and to see the places where the statues have been taken down. I wanted them to walk on the campus of UVA, which has been the site of some pretty rough stuff back and forth, and to have the debate over James Madison's legacy, which they did. They're all optimistic, and they get really mad at me when I'm not, because I know they think that I can see the future, and it scares them that I'm so negative. But I tried to explain to them why, which is that you don't even have the chance to share a different point of view. In my class, you are expected to debate with respect. You're expected to listen. I want you to be asking questions of those you disagree with, much more than to learn how to argue your own point. I want you to understand the other side of the debate. Miles, you and I have known each other for 10 years. I've never been more dedicated to the sharing of ideas and to this commitment to teaching. And it is tough as shit. And okay, I use bad words, maybe I shouldn't, but I do to make a point, which is academia doesn't want this. For those of you who have kids in high school or college, they're not being taught to listen and learn. They're not being taught to share and to take in. They're being taught by the professor what the professor's right and wrong is. They're being taught the professor, the teacher's values, not the values of tolerance and inclusion and seeking truth, which means that we all have something to learn. We're focused on economics because of the hundreds of people who are on this exchange right now who care about taxes. I'm going to tell you point blank that if your kids continue to be educated the way they are now, you're not going to care about taxes 10 or 20 years ago. You're not going to care about cost benefit analysis, and you're not going to care about the step up in basis, because your kids are either going to be incapable of being solid decision makers and being able to spot fake news from real news and not being taught how to problem solve. They're going to be incapable of that. And we're going to be basically governed by the Chinese and their way of government and their way of business. I am so petrified of this because of what's happening right now. That's really, I know your people aren't concerned about it, but that's the conversation we really should be having.
Let's move on to geopolitical issues. China, the Middle East and Iran, North Korea, let's talk about those things. What's the biggest thing that keeps you up at night geopolitically? Is it
And I
China,
love,
the Middle East? What is it?
yeah, I love asking that question because you get really cool answers. And my answer is China, which is not a surprise, but my answer is because of the students, not because of the government or the economy. These Chinese students every single day are being taught the mathematics they need to work out the economic puzzles of the 21st century. They're learning English much faster than our students are learning Chinese. They're learning the discipline and the value of hard work at a point when we can't get people to go to work because we're giving them checks to stay home. They can't, these entry-level jobs, Miles, they are empty because they're being paid more money not to work than they are to work. And it's on the backs of those where this money is coming from, because government doesn't give out money. It comes from taxpayers. I'm scared to death. What keeps me up at night, and it actually does, is that these Chinese students are eating our students for lunch. And we're going to sit and we're going to complain and blame corporate America. We're going to blame all sorts of the rich for why the Chinese are doing so well. And it's our fault for letting this happen. There are still hundreds of people on this call, even though we've been on for almost an hour. And I say to them explicitly, it is not their fault. It's your fault for not demanding more from your kids and not demanding more from their education institutions. They're building a military. Our students want to dismantle ours. They're building a incredible bar that their kids have to pass if they're going to get the good jobs. We're lowering our education standards. They just did it in Virginia. They just made the commitment that instead of trying to have more AP classes and more honors classes in math, they're going to focus on the lowest rung at the very moment that China is focusing on the highest. We are screwing ourselves in the future, and you on this call are letting it happen.
Talk about, this is a selfish question, Israel. The Trump administration was exceedingly supportive of Israel. They unilaterally helped move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. They were exceedingly supportive of the initiatives of the government. They were very hostile from a perspective of the Iran agreement. And it seems like the Biden administration is not nearly as supportive of Israel. They're entertaining re-engaging in negotiations with Iran. I know that Elizabeth Warren is very hostile toward Israel. What do you think the ultimate policies will be of the Biden administration toward the Middle East, toward Israel, and re-entertaining and engaging in negotiations with Iran?
And by the way, I'm inviting people to comment. I don't know if the comment thing was turned on or turned off, but they always want this interaction. Miles, this is an area where I've changed my point of view. Back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I used to work for the Israeli government, trying to give them language to help promote a safe, prosperous, and strong Israel. I believe that the efforts of the Trump administration to bring the 4 Arab countries into a peace agreement, or at least a agreement of understanding with Israel, is the best thing that could happen. I think that the governments of the UAE and we'll see what happens with Saudi Arabia, that there's been a remarkable change, that Egypt is seeking an understanding, that these countries are realizing, other than Iran, are realizing that it's better to be tolerant of each other than it is to destroy each other. And so I don't look at Biden as being pro or anti-Israel. Donald Trump clearly was biased in favor of Israel. I look at the Trump administration as helping the one country that is not participating in these agreements. There's only one country in the Middle East that is a genuine threat, and that's Iran. And that, it just feels to me like that's where the Biden administration has put their greatest effort into actually helping and stabilizing and potentially giving $1 gazillion to the one government that wants Israel's destruction. So that's my fear. And yet that's my number two thing that keeps me awake at night. Let's do two more and then we'll call it a day.
What will the relationship between Vladimir Putin and the Russian administration be with the United States? Where is it today, and where do you think it's going forward?
It's not good right now because they don't think that we're a threat. They're putting so many more people into Ukraine, into the border conflict. They're threatening other countries on their borders. I am afraid that Putin, in an effort to keep control of his own country, is going to start to gobble up other countries that were set free after the fall of the Soviet Union. And I hope that Biden has the will and the strength to say to Putin, you can't do this. This is not acceptable. This is wrong. But it's a wait and see. Look, you had Blinken still when the Chinese government, I was shocked at how insulting they were in the first time that the Chinese government and the American government and their counterparts met. They no longer fear us. The Russians no longer fear us. And I don't believe that Trump's policy of being rude and obnoxious was a good one in foreign policy. Geez, you're not going to align yourself with someone you don't like. But you have to be strong and you have to be respected. And I question whether we will be.
Last two. First one is, how does the Republican Party, what do they have to do policy-wise, and what messaging do they have to deliver to regain their relevance?
Okay, and I always do this, Miles, because I want you to know where you stand. So we have lost only 7 people. This has been on for an hour, and all but 7 people have hung through this whole thing, which is pretty amazing. I think that the Republican Party has to recapture those people that it lost, which are the upper middle class suburban voters. I think it's got to do better among middle-aged women with children at home. The Democratic Party is a stronghold among younger women, 18 to 29, even 18 to 39. The Republicans always did well among the 40 to 49-year-olds who are raising kids, and kids who are still at home. They have to win them back. And I don't believe they need to change their strategy at all. I believe they need to change their communication to be less offensive. I think you can win more people with honey than you do with vinegar. And Donald Trump's performance in that first debate was the perfect example of that. He was rude and abusive. And if he had let Joe Biden talk more, he actually would have done more. What Trump didn't realize, and what I'm not doing a good job here, quite frankly, is talk less and people actually like you more.
Last one, what messaging would you give to the Democratic Party in terms of enhancing their popularity and ultimately raising the bar of confidence and hope for the future for the American people?
I think that they're afraid that they're going to lose the House in 2 years. And so they've gone way to the left in terms of what they're supporting look, they may not call it the Green New Deal, but that's exactly what they're trying to implement. They may not call it a war on the wealthy, but that's exactly what they're doing. So their language is better than it has been, but the policies are exactly what will give Republicans the majority. And I know some of these programs in the stimulus package, the idea that you've now bailed out San Francisco so they can continue to spend money on the alcohol and drugs for homeless people. There is so much money that goes into that program. Or that the COVID stimulus package, less than 10% deals with COVID. Less than 6% of the infrastructure package deals with that. Or that you've got to take a really tough approach to China, or our company is going to be eaten for lunch. There are so many poison pills that are in the legislation that's either already passed or about to pass that will give Republicans the majority. If the Democrats really want to expand, they'll govern from the center, not from the far left. Miles, let me say something to you. I appreciated 100 days ago, and I appreciate it now. Every question you asked was straightforward. Every question you asked was devoid of a partisan tilt. And you can't get that on social media. You can't get that on cable. We would not have these divisions if people approach politics the way that you do, if they approached the economy the way that you do, if they approached with their objective to seek the truth rather than to seek partisan gain. So I'm grateful to do this with you.
Well, thank you. And it's always a pleasure. And this was exceedingly insightful, informative, and very enlightening, as always. On behalf of all of Peerage Capital's partners, family, friends, and colleagues, and all of the Luntz Global family and friends and partners and colleagues, thank you to everyone for your generosity of time and your participation. Frank and I, we wish everyone good health and joy for the rest of 2021. We look forward to doing this again soon. And thank you again for all of your time. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Frank.